Hey, what's going on? Welcome to the Doug.Show. Today, I'm recording out in the mountains. And if you're not watching this on YouTube, you should at least check it out when you get a chance, when you are able to take a look at the video. I'm in this town called Ouray, and it's near Telluride, just at a little inn, sitting on the porch and recording. This is going to be a quick episode. I'm going to talk about upcoming podcasts. I'm going to launch a new show, and it seems a little bit crazy because I already have 2 podcasts, but I'm very enthusiastic. I'm excited about this project, and I've dropped little hints here and there over the last few weeks. I have a couple thoughts that I wrote down in my trusty little notebook. So like I said, I'm pumped about this podcast, and I will tell you, it is going to be about SEO and marketing. I think there's going to be some challenges with the topic area. There's going to be challenges with me having this show, the Doug.Show. And I'm going to go through a couple of the problems that I've outlined, but one interesting thing when you start creating content like this and you have a podcast or you have a YouTube channel or a blog, I obviously want the project to be successful. However, even if there are a number of issues and failures, because I can share the story and hopefully help other people not make those mistakes, there's something worthwhile happening with it. The content that comes out of the failures will potentially be more helpful and interesting than the successes. Now, that said, it would be just absolutely amazing if there were no major failure points. But here's a couple things, right? So it's going to be an SEO and marketing show. I'm going to focus on the advanced area. This show is going to be for professionals in the industry, not beginners. That will be the main distinction. It should be people that go, the people that listen to the show, the audience should be people that go to conferences for marketing or SEO, professionals. So that's the biggest distinction. Now, because I'm starting a new project and I do like little notebooks and stuff like that, I actually have several notebooks that are blank. They're ready for me to start writing. And I grabbed a new notebook, and I wanted the new notebook to only have the podcast ideas and issues and questions. And I was going to use it as a journal and somewhat as a planner as well. But I only have podcast related ideas. And the main thing is I'm writing down areas that might be an issue. The whole premise is launching this new show and then using all the best practices that I know, testing things that supposedly should be best practices. Maybe I've seen evidence to the contrary, and I'm thinking, I want to test something a little bit different to see if the quote best practices are just people regurgitating something that may have been true years ago, may have never been true. And I'm just going to see if another method might work. And I'm going to tell you all about some of these ideas. One of the main issues is I'm planning on selling the show. I'm going to start a podcast, and then I'm planning on selling the podcast. My initial gut time frame was about 6 to 9 months or so, but I'm flexible on that. One of the biggest issues with changing hands is there will need to be a new host. I'm going to host the show myself to launch it. My charming personality certainly comes through, and I want people to come along for the ride. Changing host will be a problem to solve. I don't know if it'll be an easy or hard problem. There are a couple things that I might be able to do. I'm going to lay out a bunch of problems that I might have, and I'm not going to be able to answer them here. I'm going to have to test things, but essentially I'm going to be able to have a show in the future where I'm talking through what might happen, and then I'm going to test something, and then I'll tell you later what actually happened and maybe some learnings from it. So changing host, that could be a major issue. Another problem is launching in general, right? So here's one of the things you hear about launching a podcast. Maybe you have 2 or 3 or 5 or 10 shows at your launch and publish them. I'm also going to do a YouTube channel. So there's a question, do I publish all of those episodes like initially all at once? Are there going to be any issues with that? Any downsides by publishing 10 YouTube videos all at once? I'm not sure on a brand new channel. Maybe nothing will happen. Maybe there could be a little bit of an issue. This is one of the areas where I want to challenge what the common best practices are, because I have another friend launching a show. They're going to launch with, I think, 3 episodes. That's the best practice, but I wonder, is there a better way to do it? So I'm going to test some things out. The other thing is I'm running a boot camp. I'm going to do a boot camp because a lot of people were asking me about starting a show. They wanted to start their own podcast. And I would say over the past couple of years, maybe once a month, somebody would ask me about it. After speaking at FinCon on podcasting, I had 2 or 3 people a week for about a month. And I was like, people want to start podcasts. They see I do it. So it obviously makes them think that dumbass can have 2 podcasts, then I could probably do it too, which is true. It is very true. I'm pretty excited, and I'm doing this boot camp because people could come along for the ride. People need accountability. I've seen so many people start a show and then they quit after a couple episodes. Maybe they even do interviews and they spend all this time editing and then they never launch, or they publish 7 episodes. I hear that's like the average before someone fades. They call it pod fade. And one of the main things I've done a really good job at is just publishing a show and not getting burned out. And the hard part for people is, one, they're perfectionists, right? So that's tough. But then they also get advice like these ideas of best practices that are just fucking unsustainable. Like, people are not going to clean and edit their full podcast if they're publishing 2 episodes a week and they're really busy. They have a full-time job and kids, and then they have to spend like 2 hours per week, like fucking listening to themselves talk and edit that. That's really tough. It's not sustainable. So one of the main things is I'm going to let people know that it is okay if you don't put out the best product every single time. If you're just trying to be consistent, you'll get better. You have to put in the effort, of course, you'll get better. But if you are trying to do the very best every single time you publish something, you're going to drive yourself insane. And the thing is, if you're listening, if you're watching this, some of the shows suck, some of them are not as good as others. I do show up every time. I haven't missed a scheduled episode for either show. Sometimes you have to republish an episode, but you could be creative about it. But the main idea here is doing the boot camp. That made me extremely nervous. I actually dragged my feet on this for several weeks before I started putting some feelers out there. And the thing is, I knew that people were asking me about podcasting anyway, so there should be people interested. But as soon as you start shifting and transitioning to a different area than you're used to, it makes you a little bit nervous, especially if you're going to charge money for it. I'm charging money for the boot camp, and it should be okay, but I won't know until I actually take the chance and put myself out there with a chance of failure, which unfortunately I'll have to share with you, fine people, if that happens. So it'll be very exciting. There's a couple other things I'll mention here. Let me recap. So launching a new show. I'm probably going to launch it in February. I don't have a specific date. I have a very cool idea about how to launch the show, where I am going to take advantage of my 10 years of experience working online. I also have some ideas where I've seen people launch things outside of the podcasting world. And I wonder, how can I take those same ideas, which are successful elsewhere, and bring it into the podcasting world and kind of show up where it looks like, holy shit, it looks like this guy knows what he's doing. And if I can do that, I think that will potentially be proof. I think after the boot camp, right? It'll be 10 weeks. I'll put a link in the description if you're thinking, hey, I want to start my new show. If you're thinking, hey, I want to do a podcast to accompany my website, or maybe you have a small business and you think a podcast can help you find clients, which is probably a very good idea. You can find clients that way. You build so much trust with people when you talk to them through podcasts in their earbud. You can come along for the ride. There will be some accountability. We'll have a network of people, and I'm going to keep it fairly small. I will most likely, this is some marketing things that I'm trying to work out, but I think I'm going to open it up for about maybe 5 to 7 people at the early bird price point, and then I'm going to close it. And then I will probably open it back up a few weeks later for a 2 to 3x price point. And the thing is, I don't know if people are going to sign up. I need to check and test the actual demand here because I literally don't know what it's going to be. So I need to test it. So we got the bootcamp, launching the show. All right. I will sell the show along with an email list, the YouTube channel. I'm going to sell the audio files. It'll be hosted on a podcast hosting platform where dynamic ad insertion is possible. So they could take out any of the ads that I have in there and put in their own ads. It'll be essentially a turnkey situation for a podcast, email list, and YouTube channel. And I think I'm going to stick with those. Those are the things that I know. After that, 2 additional things will happen. 1, I will have a story to tell about what happened. I'll have a story to tell about the launch. I'll have a story to tell about trying to sell a podcast, which is kind of not really talked about. It's not done as far as I know. And I'm building mine so that it'll be easy to just turn the keys over to the new owner. The other part is I'll have a framework to either do more podcast boot camps, and I'll also have the ability to just do a course, right? I've talked about digital products. I enjoy it. I like helping people out. I know, some people are like, why don't you just make it free? Put it on YouTube, make it free. Those are already out there, number one. People don't put any value on the free content. If you pay to check out the content, you have a sunk cost. You have some incentive to actually follow through and do the course work and do something with it. So it's a lot more effective from that standpoint. And of course, if I just created the content and gave it away for free, then it's just a hobby for me. So I enjoy creating the product, creating some value that people can get value from, and then they do something with it. There's many pieces here, but when I started putting it together and writing it out, pulling out my notebook, writing, thinking about it, and I thought about it for a month where I was just obsessed with it, trying to figure out the best way to do it. Anyway, if you're checking out this show, then I'm going to talk about the new show. I'm going to link up to it. I'm going to do a little thing. You'll probably hear about the launch whenever I do it. So I see Georgie's in the background here looking at me. So that means it's time to go. I think we're going to hit some hot springs or walk around and get a beer or something like that. We hiked earlier, so we did our outdoor stuff already. All right, thanks for checking out this episode. And if you have any questions or thoughts about me launching the show, the whole process, doing it in public, any of those details, let me know. Shoot me an email, feedback@Doug.Show, or you can leave a comment over on the YouTube side.